There was a time in my life when I truly believed I had found the love that would last forever. The kind of love that makes you breathe differently, walk differently, dream differently. It felt like destiny, like two souls that somehow recognized each other in a crowded world and knew, without hesitation, this is where I belong. I built my days around that love, shaped my nights around the warmth of that connection, convinced myself that forever was not just a promise but a living, breathing truth we were both walking toward. That life has a quiet way of shifting beneath your feet, and sometimes the very thing that once felt steady begins to tremble, until the cracks you tried to ignore become too wide to cross. I didn't notice it at first, the distance, the silence, the little moments when their eyes didn't shine the same way, when their laughter didn't reach me the way it used to. I tried holding on tighter, thinking that love would be enough, that my loyalty, my effort, my honesty would keep us together. But love, real love, can't be held together by one person's hands. And when the goodbye finally came, whether spoken in words or shown in actions, it shattered something inside me that I didn't know could break. I found myself standing in the ruins of a future I had already imagined, grieving someone who was still alive, grieving a version of myself I had lost while trying to love someone else. There were days I couldn't recognize my own reflection, nights when the silence in the room felt louder than my heartbeat, mornings when the sunlight felt heavy instead of warm. I wondered if I was enough, if something was wrong with me, if I was somehow unlovable now that forever had slipped away from me so easily. But heartbreak, as painful as it is, has a strange way of forcing you back into yourself. It makes you confront the parts of you that you ignored while giving someone else the best pieces of your heart. Slowly, I began to notice the things I had lost, not because someone took them from me, but because I gave them up without realizing it. My voice, my joy, my boundaries, my dreams. And as I started picking up those pieces, one by one, I began to rediscover the person I was before love changed me, and the person I could become now that heartbreak was reshaping me. Healing didn't come in a straight line. It came in waves, some gentle, some violent, some unexpected. Some days I felt strong, and other days I felt like collapsing under the weight of memories I didn't ask to revisit. But through every tear, every moment of doubt, every quiet victory, I learned something profound. Losing someone you thought would last forever is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your transformation. I realized I had survived things I thought would break me. I had learned to breathe in places that once made me suffocate. I found new joy in my own company, rediscovered hobbies I forgot I loved, reconnected with dreams I had postponed, and began to understand that the love I was searching for in someone else was a love I needed to give myself. With time, the pain softened, the memories stopped hurting, and the emptiness inside me turned into space for growth, for clarity, for new beginnings. I stopped mourning the version of my life that never happened, and began embracing the version that was unfolding right in front of me. And somewhere along the way, without forcing it, without expecting it, I realized I wasn't just healing, I was rising, stronger, wiser, softer, more connected to myself, more aware of my worth. The love I thought would last forever didn't survive, but I did. And in surviving, I discovered that I am not defined by who left, or by what ended, but by who I am becoming. And now, looking back, I don't see a story of loss. I see a story of rebirth. I see a journey of rediscovery. I see a person who learned that the greatest love story of all is the one you build with yourself. Because forever doesn't always mean another person. Sometimes forever is you growing, healing, becoming, rising again after the kind of heartbreak you once believed you'd never survive. And as the days kept unfolding, I realized that healing wasn't something that happened to me. It was something I had to choose, every morning, even on the days when the weight of what I lost felt heavier than the promise of what could still come. I began noticing how easily thoughts of them slipped into the quiet moments standing in line at the grocery store, washing dishes, hearing a song that used to play softly in the background of our shared mornings, and every time the ache returned, not as sharp as before, but still there, like a bruise you forget about until you bump into it again. Yet even in those moments, there was a part of me evolving, learning to sit with the memories instead of running from them, learning to breathe through the hurt instead of drowning in it. I started asking myself questions I had avoided for so long. Who was I before the relationship? Who had I become within it? Who was I now that it was gone? And the answers didn't come quickly, but in pieces, small realizations that arrived unexpectedly, like how much I had silenced my own needs to preserve a connection that was fading, or how often I overlooked my own intuition because I was afraid of losing someone I already knew wasn't fully present. These truths were painful, but they were also freeing, because they reminded me that part of healing is reclaiming the parts of yourself you gave away. I found comfort in small routines, little rituals that felt like acts of self-respect. Brewing coffee slowly in the morning and letting myself enjoy the smell. Stepping outside just to feel the air on my skin. Letting sunlight touch my face as if it were reminding me that I was still alive, still capable of warmth, still worthy of love. I started writing again, pouring my thoughts onto paper not because I expected answers, but because I needed to hear my own voice after so long of speaking through the filter of someone else's presence. And the more I wrote, the more I realized that grief and growth often walk hand in hand, that the pain I felt was not evidence of weakness but of depth, of devotion, of the courage it takes to love with an open heart. There were nights when I cried without holding back, letting the tears wash over me in waves, cleansing something deep inside that had been held too tightly for too long. And there were mornings when I woke up with a strange sense of calm, as if my heart had decided to take one more step forward even while my mind was still catching up. Healing became a dance between progress and setback, between acceptance and longing, between the version of me that still missed them and the version of me learning to outgrow that missing. I started reconnecting with myself in ways I had forgotten were possible. I took long drives with the windows down, letting the wind undo the knots in my chest. I revisited old hobbies, painting, reading, exploring areas of town I never noticed because I was too busy trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. I rediscovered the joy of being alone without being lonely, of finding beauty in quiet moments instead of filling them with noise. And as I explored this new version of my life, I began to see myself more clearly. I began to understand that the love I thought would last forever wasn't meant to be my whole story. It was simply a chapter, a stepping stone, a mirror reflecting both who I was and who I had the potential to become. One evening, months after everything fell apart, I found myself standing outside watching the sky fade into colors. I didn't remember noticing the four soft pinks, gentle purples, hues that felt like whispers of peace. And in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't a grand epiphany or a sudden healing. It was a quiet acceptance, a realization that I no longer needed the past to feel whole, that I no longer needed closure from them to move forward. I had given myself the closure I was searching for. I had learned to forgive the ending, to release the expectations, to soften the places inside me that had once hardened from hurt. And as the sky darkened into night, I felt grateful for the love that taught me joy, grateful for the heartbreak that taught me strength, grateful for the journey that brought me back to myself. Slowly, rediscovery turned into rebirth. I noticed how differently I carried myself, how much lighter my steps felt, how much more I listened to my own needs instead of shrinking them for the sake of someone else. I learned to set boundaries, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. I learned to say no when something didn't align with my peace. I learned that being alone isn't something to fear, but something to embrace, because solitude can be the soil where your true self finally blooms. And with this new understanding came a deeper kind of confidence, the kind that grows from within, rather than depending on validation from someone else. There were still moments when the past tried to pull me back, days when old memories resurfaced, not to hurt me, but to remind me how far I'd come. Moments when a song, a smell, or a familiar street corner brought back flashes of what once was. But instead of breaking me, those memories now felt like soft echoes of a life I no longer needed. They became part of my story, not the definition of it. And each time they returned, I greeted them with compassion instead of longing, with gratitude instead of grief. Because I had finally reached a place of acceptance, a place where the past could exist without controlling my present. As time continued its quiet work, something beautiful started happening. I began dreaming again. Not the kind of dreams tied to another person's presence, but dreams rooted in my own desires, my own hopes, my own vision of the life I wanted to build. I dreamed of traveling, of new beginnings, of finding love again someday, not to replace what I lost, but to expand what I had learned. I dreamed of peace, of purpose, of waking up with excitement instead of pain. And the more I dreamed, the more I believed those dreams were possible. Rediscovery also brought new connections, people who entered my life unexpectedly, people who saw me not through the lens of my heartbreak, but through the strength I carried because of it. Conversations that felt refreshing, laughter that felt genuine, moments that reminded me that life had more to offer than the hurt I had survived. I found myself opening up slowly, cautiously at first, but with a sincerity that surprised even me. I realized that vulnerability wasn't a weakness. It was a sign of healing. A sign that my heart still had room for love, for possibility, for something real and lasting. And somewhere in the middle of all this rediscovery, I began to understand the true meaning of forever. Forever isn't always about a person. Sometimes forever is a lesson, a moment, a shift, a change that stays with you long after someone leaves. The love I thought would last forever didn't stay, but it shaped me. It showed me what I deserve. It revealed what I would never again accept. And because of that, in its own bittersweet way, it did last forever, not as a relationship, but as a transformation. Looking back now, I no longer see the ending as a loss, but as a doorway I didn't know I needed to walk through. A doorway that led me to a version of myself who is stronger, wiser, more patient, more intentional, and more aligned with my truth. I learned that sometimes the universe removes people from our lives not to punish us, but to protect us, to guide us, to push us toward something greater than anything we imagined while holding on to what was familiar. I learned that rediscovery is not a return to who I once was, but an emergence into who I was always meant to become. As I continue walking forward, I carry every lesson, every heartbreak, every moment of growth with me, not as burdens but as blessings. My heart is no longer heavy. It is open, expanding, ready for whatever life brings next. I know now that love will return in its own time, in its own form, with someone who meets me where I am, instead of asking me to shrink. Someone who stays, someone who chooses me the way I choose myself now. But until that love arrives, even after it does, I am at peace with my own company, content with my own journey, grateful for the love I give to myself each day. Because the greatest rediscovery was not the world around me, or the future ahead of me, but the awakening of the strength, resilience, and beauty that had been within me all along.